Hey, kid, stop right there.
Me?
Yeah, you. Where'd you get that?
I bought it at GameStop.
You bought it?
Now.
With what money?
Step back.
Kids your age don't have money to buy video games. Did you steal that?
Look!
Officer Miller, badge 6247, this is District Attorney Rachel Chen. The child you are currently detaining is my 8...
Racist cop accuses 8-year-old of theft. Didn't know his mom was the district attorney the afternoon son beat down on the parking lot outside GameStop on Riverside Avenue as 8-year-old Marcus Chun clutched his birthday present. A newly purchased video game still
kid,
in its
right
plastic wrapper with the receipt stapled to the bag, and walked toward his mother's car, completely unaware that Officer Brandon Miller had been watching him from across the street and had already decided, based on nothing more than seeing a young black child leaving an electronics store with merchandise, that the boy must have stolen it. Marcus, small for his age at just 4 feet tall and barely 60 pounds, wearing his favorite Spider-Man t-shirt and light-up sneakers that blinked with every step, had spent weeks saving his allowance and birthday money to buy this game, and his grandmother had driven him to the store specifically so he could make the purchase himself as a lesson in saving and financial responsibility. Officer Miller, a 34-year-old patrol officer with the Riverside Police Department and 7 years of service, marked by a troubling pattern of complaints that supervisors had consistently ignored, saw something entirely different. A black kid with expensive merchandise who probably stole it, an assumption so automatic and so reflexive that Miller didn't even consider asking store employees if there had been a theft. Didn't consider that the child was walking calmly toward a car rather than running. Didn't consider the visible receipt. Didn't consider that an actual shoplifter wouldn't be strolling through a parking lot in broad daylight carrying merchandise in a store bag with branding clearly visible. And didn't consider the most important detail he couldn't possibly know, that the grandmother sitting in the silver sedan waiting for Marcus was Janet Chun, a 62-year-old retired schoolteacher who had raised her daughter to believe in justice and education. And that daughter, Marcus's mother, was District Attorney Rachel Chen, the chief prosecutor for Riverside County with 15 years of legal experience, a reputation for being tough on police misconduct, and absolutely zero tolerance for officers who violated the constitutional rights of children based on racial bias. Miller's decision to approach this 8-year-old child with aggressive accusations rather than professional courtesy, to grab the boy's arm and accuse him of theft without any evidence or complaint from the store, to ignore the child's tearful explanations and the grandmother's protests, and to escalate the situation by physically detaining a crying third grader in a parking lot, while multiple witnesses recorded the encounter would result in a viral video reaching 187 million views. Miller's immediate suspension when D.A. Chun personally filed criminal charges against him for assault on a minor and violation of civil rights. A complete investigation revealing Miller's pattern of targeting minority children over 7 years with 23 complaints of racial profiling involving juveniles that had all been dismissed by supervisors who failed in their duty to protect the community. A criminal trial where D.A. Chun personally prosecuted the case against the officer who had assaulted her son, Miller's conviction and 18-month jail sentence, a $2.3 million civil settlement paid to the Chun family, Miller's permanent ban from law enforcement, and sweeping reforms in how Riverside Police Department handles complaints against officers and trains personnel on interactions with children, all because an officer saw a black child with a legally purchased video game and his racist brain couldn't process the simple truth that children buy things in stores and that skin color is not evidence of a crime. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. If you believe 8-year-old children should be able to buy video games without being accused of theft, like this video and subscribe. Marcus Chun loved video games. At 8 years old, he was a straight-A student at Riverside Elementary, a voracious reader who devoured books about space exploration and dinosaurs, and a kid who had recently discovered the joy of earning and saving money. When his grandmother Janet had given him $20 for his birthday last month, and his parents had matched it with another $20, Marcus had made a decision. Instead of spending it immediately on candy or toys, he would save it along with his weekly $5 allowance until he had enough to buy the new adventure game all his friends were playing. 6 weeks of saving, of resisting the temptation to spend his money on smaller purchases, had finally paid off. Marcus had $62.30 saved in his dinosaur-shaped piggy bank, and the game he wanted cost $59.99 plus tax. He was ready. His grandmother Janet had volunteered to take him to GameStop that Saturday afternoon. His mother Rachel, the district attorney for Riverside County, was at her office preparing for a major trial starting Monday. His father David, an architect, was at a work conference. So Grandma Janet had picked Marcus up at noon. They'd had lunch at his favorite burger place, and then headed to GameStop so Marcus could make his big purchase. The experience had been everything Marcus hoped for. The GameStop employee, a young man named Tyler, had been friendly and patient as Marcus carefully counted out his cash at the register, helped him understand the receipt, and congratulated him on saving up for something he really wanted. Marcus had left the store beaming, clutching the bag with his game inside, the receipt stapled to the outside, already imagining the hours of fun ahead. He was halfway across the parking lot, heading toward his grandmother's silver Honda Accord parked near the back, when a voice called out behind him, "Hey, kid, stop right there." Marcus turned around and saw a police officer walking quickly toward him, hand on his belt, face stern. The boy froze, confused. He'd been taught to respect police officers, to listen to authority, but he had no idea why an officer would be yelling at him. Officer Brandon Miller reached Marcus within seconds, looming over the small child. At 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, Miller's physical presence was overwhelming to an 8-year-old who barely reached his waist. "Where'd you get that?" Miller pointed at the GameStop bag in Marcus's hands. Marcus looked down at his bag, then back up at the officer, thoroughly confused. I bought it. At GameStop. Just now." "You bought it?" Miller's tone was openly skeptical, almost mocking. "With what money? Kids your age don't have money to buy video games. Did you steal that?" Marcus's eyes widened. He'd never been accused of stealing anything in his life. "No, I saved my allowance. I saved for 6 weeks. My grandma is right there." He pointed toward the Honda where Janet was now getting out of the car, having noticed the confrontation. Miller ignored the pointing. "I think you stole that game. I'm going to need you to come with me while we sort this out." "I didn't steal anything." Marcus's voice rose, tears starting to form. "I have the receipt. Look." He held up the bag where the receipt was clearly stapled to the outside. Miller grabbed Marcus's wrist, gripping it firmly. "I'll decide if that receipt is real or fake. You're being detained for investigation of shoplifting." The physical contact, the accusation, the stern voice. It was all too much for an 8-year-old. Marcus started crying, trying to pull his wrist free. "Let go. I didn't do anything wrong." "Grandma." Janet Chun had been watching from the car and was now hurrying across the parking lot, her 62-year-old legs moving as fast as they could. Officer, let go of my grandson. What's going on?" Miller turned to Janet, still gripping Marcus's wrist. "Ma'am, step back. This child is being detained for investigation of theft." "Theft?" Janet's voice was sharp with indignation. "He didn't steal anything. We just left GameStop where he bought that game with money he saved. I was with him. He has the receipt." "Ma'am, I'm conducting an investigation. Step back or you'll be arrested for interference." Janet pulled out her phone and immediately called her daughter. It rang twice before Rachel Chun, district attorney for Riverside County, answered. "Hi, Mom. What's..." "Rachel, a police officer just grabbed Marcus in the GameStop parking lot and is accusing him of stealing the game he just bought. He won't let go of Marcus's arm. Marcus is crying. You need to get here now." Rachel's voice went from casual to deadly serious in an instant. "What officer? What department?" Janet looked at Miller's uniform and badge. "Riverside PD. Badge number 6247. I'm 5 minutes away. Do not let that officer take Marcus anywhere. I'm calling the watch commander right now. Put me on speaker." Janet held her phone up toward Miller. "Officer, I have Marcus's mother on the phone. She'd like to speak with you." Miller looked annoyed. "Ma'am, I don't have time to talk to." Rachel's voice came through the phone speaker, and her tone was unmistakable authority. "Officer Miller, badge 6247. This is District Attorney Rachel Chun. The child you are currently detaining is my 8-year-old son Marcus. He purchased that video game legally approximately 10 minutes ago with money he saved from his allowance. The receipt is stapled to the bag. You will release my son's wrist immediately. You will step back, and you will explain on what legal basis you have detained an 8-year-old child for purchasing merchandise from a store. Miller's face showed a flicker of recognition at the name District Attorney Chun, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. Ma'am, district attorney or not, I observed suspicious behavior. What suspicious behavior? Rachel's voice cut through like a knife. Describe the specific, articulable facts that gave you reasonable suspicion to detain my child. A child leaving an electronics store with expensive merchandise. A child leaving a store with a purchase in a store bag with a visible receipt is not suspicious behavior, Officer Miller. That is called shopping. What specific facts suggested criminal activity? Miller stammered. The expensive merchandise. Kids that age don't usually what, Officer Miller? Have allowances? Receive birthday money? Save up for things they want? Finish that sentence for me. Miller went silent. Several people in the parking lot had stopped and were watching. At least 3 had their phones out recording. Rachel continued, her prosecutor voice in full force. Officer Miller, you have 10 seconds to release my son's wrist and step back, or I will add unlawful detention of a minor and battery on a child to the complaint I'm already drafting. 10, 9, 8. Miller released Marcus's wrist. The boy immediately ran to his grandmother, sobbing, rubbing his wrist where the officer's grip had been too tight. Thank you, Rachel said coldly. Now, did you speak to any GameStop employee before approaching my son? No, but did you observe my son attempting to conceal merchandise? No, but did you observe my son running, fleeing, or engaging in any behavior consistent with someone who had committed a crime? No, but did you see the receipt stapled to the outside of the bag? I saw it, but receipts can be fake. Or did you attempt to verify the receipt's authenticity before physically detaining an 8-year-old child? Miller had no answer. Rachel's voice became even colder. Officer Miller, stay exactly where you are. I am currently pulling into the parking lot, and the watch commander I just spoke with is also en route. You are about to explain to both of us how you determined that an 8-year-old child legally purchasing a video game constituted reasonable suspicion for detention. A Riverside PD patrol. Supervisor's vehicle pulled into the parking lot. Lights on. Sergeant David Rodriguez stepped out, took one look at the scene. Crying child, grandmother comforting him, officer standing nearby, multiple witnesses recording, and immediately understood this was a disaster. Moments later, Rachel Chen's car pulled up. She was out of the vehicle instantly, moving toward her son. She was a striking figure. A 40-year-old Asian-American woman in a tailored suit, briefcase in hand, with an expression that could freeze fire. She went immediately to Marcus, kneeling down to his level. Baby, are you okay? Did he hurt you? Marcus was still crying, showing her his wrist where red marks were visible from Miller's grip. He grabbed me, Mom. He said I stole my game. I didn't steal it. I saved my allowance. Rachel examined his wrist, her jaw tightening. She took several photos with her phone, documenting the marks. Then she stood and turned to Sergeant Rodriguez. Sergeant Rodriguez, I'm District Attorney Rachel Chin. That officer, she pointed at Miller, just committed battery on my 8-year-old son. He detained Marcus without reasonable suspicion, ignored clearly visible evidence that the merchandise was legally purchased, physically grabbed a child hard enough to leave marks, refused to release him when requested by the child's grandmother, and escalated a non-existent situation into an assault on a minor. I want his badge and weapon secured immediately. I want his body camera footage preserved as evidence. And I want him transported to the station for a formal statement because I will be filing criminal charges. Rodriguez's face went pale. District Attorney Chun, let me get the full story. The full story is simple, Sergeant. My mother took my son to GameStop to buy a video game with money he'd saved. He made a legal purchase. Store employee can verify. Receipt is stapled to the bag. My son walked to my mother's car. Officer Miller, with no complaint from the store, no observation of any criminal activity, and no reasonable suspicion of any wrongdoing, approached my 8-year-old son, accused him of theft, grabbed his wrist, detained him, ignored the visible receipt, ignored my mother's explanation, and refused to release him until I personally intervened. That is assault on a minor, unlawful detention, and violation of civil rights. The only question now is whether your department handles this appropriately or whether I add the department's response to my complaint. Rodriguez turned to Miller. Officer Miller, is this accurate? Miller tried to defend himself. Sarge, I saw the kid leaving the store with expensive merchandise, and based on my training and experience. Did you verify with store employees whether there was a theft? Rodriguez interrupted. No, but did the child attempt to flee or conceal the merchandise? No, but did you see the receipt on the bag? Yes, but receipts can be. Did you verify the receipt before detaining the child? Miller went silent. Rodriguez made a decision. Officer Miller, you're suspended effective immediately. I need your badge and weapon. You'll be transported to the station for a formal statement. Rachel stepped forward. Sergeant, I'm also going to need the names and contact information for every witness here with cameras. This is now a criminal investigation, and I'll be handling it personally through my office. Over the next hour, witness statements were collected. The GameStop employee Tyler confirmed Marcus had purchased the game legally just minutes before the confrontation. The store's security footage showed the entire transaction. Marcus counting out his money carefully, receiving his receipt, thanking Tyler, and leaving the store with his purchase in a store bag. 3 witnesses had recorded the parking lot confrontation from different angles. The footage was devastating to Miller's defense. It showed Marcus walking normally toward his grandmother's car, not running or concealing anything, Miller approaching aggressively without first checking with the store, Miller grabbing Marcus's wrist and refusing to release despite the child's tears and protests. The receipt clearly visible on the bag throughout the encounter, Janet's attempts to explain being dismissed, Miller only releasing Marcus after Rachel's countdown. Miller's body camera footage was equally damning, capturing his own words accusing an 8-year-old of theft without evidence and his inability to articulate any reasonable suspicion beyond expensive merchandise. The investigation moved quickly. Rachel Chun, in her capacity as district attorney, assigned the case to her most experienced prosecutor, herself, and personally filed criminal charges against Officer Brandon Miller. Battery on a minor, state charge. Physical contact with a child without legal justification, unlawful detention of a minor, state charge. Detaining a child without reasonable suspicion, deprivation of rights under color of law, federal charge. 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Violating civil rights under authority of law, child endangerment, state charge. Creating risk of harm to a child. The case attracted immediate media attention. The video of a police officer grabbing an 8-year-old and accusing him of theft while the crying child held up his receipt went viral, reaching 187 million views. Public outrage was intense. The internal investigation into Miller's career revealed a disturbing pattern that supervisors had failed to address. Over 7 years, Miller had received 23 formal complaints specifically involving interactions with minority children and teenagers. 14 complaints from Black families, 6 complaints from Hispanic families, 3 complaints from Asian families. All 23 complaints had been dismissed by supervisors as unsubstantiated or insufficient evidence without meaningful investigation. The pattern was clear. Miller saw minority children and assumed criminality. His overall statistics were equally troubling. 78% of his stops involved minorities in a patrol area that was 49% minority. His investigation rate for minority juveniles was 6 times higher than for white juveniles in the same area. The criminal trial was swift and decisive. Rachel Chun recused herself from personally prosecuting but stayed intimately involved, ensuring the case was handled properly. The prosecution presented the 3 civilian videos showing the entire encounter. Miller's body camera footage capturing his baseless accusations, GameStop security footage proving the legal purchase, Tyler the employee's testimony confirming Marcus had paid Janet Chen's testimony. About Miller's refusal to listen, the receipt itself. Preserved as evidence, medical photos of the marks on Marcus's wrist, expert testimony on Fourth Amendment requirements, statistical evidence of Miller's pattern of targeting minority children. The defense attempted to argue Miller had been doing his job, preventing theft. This argument collapsed when prosecutors demonstrated no theft had occurred or been reported. Miller never checked with store employees before approaching. The receipt was clearly visible, but ignored. Miller couldn't articulate any suspicious behavior beyond a child leaving a store with a purchase. Miller's pattern of similar complaints involving minority children. 8-year-old Marcus took the stand. The jury watched as this small, articulate child described being scared and confused when accused, showing his receipt, and crying when the officer grabbed his wrist. It was devastating testimony. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The judge, in his sentencing remarks, was scathing. Officer Miller, you saw an 8-year-old black child with a video game and your first assumption was theft. Not shopping. Not a birthday present. Not allowance money saved. Theft. You didn't investigate. You didn't ask questions. You grabbed a child, made him cry, left marks on his wrist, and traumatized him. All because you couldn't imagine a black child could legally own something nice. Your pattern of targeting minority children over 7 years shows this wasn't an isolated mistake. This was who you are. You abused your authority, you harmed a child, and you violated the public trust. Miller was sentenced to 18 months in jail, 3 years probation, and permanent disqualification from law enforcement. The civil lawsuit filed by the Chun family sought $2.3 million in damages for battery, emotional distress, violation of civil rights, and the creation of lasting trauma for an 8-year-old who now feared police officers. The city, facing the viral videos, the criminal conviction, and the devastating testimony of a traumatized child, settled for the full amount. Rachel Chun donated the entire settlement to establish the Marcus Chun Foundation for Children's Rights, a non-profit organization providing legal assistance to families whose children have been racially profiled or mistreated by law enforcement. The case led to sweeping reforms. Mandatory training on implicit bias and interactions with juveniles, a new policy requiring verification with store employees before approaching juveniles for suspected shoplifting, and independent review of all dismissed complaints to identify problem officers, a civilian oversight board with authority to review juvenile interactions, the termination of 2 supervisors who had dismissed Miller's 23 complaints without investigation. 4 years after the incident, Marcus is now 12 years old. He's still a straight-A student, still loves video games and space exploration. But he also speaks at school assemblies about his experience, has testified before the city council about police reform, and has met with the mayor to discuss youth rights. His mother says he wants to be a lawyer when he grows up. Officer Brandon Miller, now 38, works in warehouse logistics. He cannot work in law enforcement anywhere in the United States due to his criminal conviction and inclusion in the national database of officers terminated for misconduct. The lesson is clear and permanent. 8-year-old children have the right to buy things without being accused of theft. Black children deserve to be seen as children, not as criminals. And officers who cannot see past their racial bias to recognize that a kid with a receipt and a smile just bought his first big purchase with saved allowance money will face criminal prosecution, career destruction, and serve as a warning to every officer who sees melanin and assumes malice instead of recognizing the simple truth that children of all colors shop, save, dream, and deserve to walk through parking lots without being grabbed, accused, and traumatized by adults who should know better. If you believe 8-year-old children shouldn't be grabbed and accused of theft for buying video games, share Marcus's story. And if you think 18 months in jail plus permanent ban from law enforcement is exactly what officers deserve when they assault children based on racist assumptions, subscribe for more stories where racial profiling meets justice, even when the victim is a third grader who just wanted to play a new game.